I just wanted to start with an introduction. So my name, I guess I do know almost all of you, is Jacinta Gallant. I live in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, which is the east coast of Canada. And I have been a collaborative lawyer and mediator since 2001. And so I've watched my profession, the legal profession, continue to struggle with the challenges of even asking, because we're so used to telling. We are a telling profession. We are the ones with the answers. And so watching the struggle that I went through becoming a lawyer, then the struggle to become a lawyer who could be authentically herself, right, in the work that we do, led me about, gosh, I guess it is 10 years ago, to become to go on a journey of curiosity before I ever met Cheryl or learned anything about insight. So what I want to share with you today is how I managed to create my day job to be utilizing insight. And I hope that it will both inspire you and challenge you. So my journey started, as I've said, 10 years ago, where I decided to spend more time being curious and less time knowing everything. That led me to have to go on a problem-solving holiday. So it's a funny story, because I was used to being someone that either professionally or even personally, people kind of, asked for help, you know what I mean? And I was able to bite the hook every time. Yeah, I know what you should do, or I have a good advice. And I was very, very good at telling, or I was very good at steering with a good question that was a bit of a, you should do this, but I'm going to formulate it into a question so that you can eventually get to where I think you should be. So know that is pretty much it seems to be an occupational hazard, not just for lawyers, but it's particularly hard for lawyers to ask rather than tell. So on that journey with curiosity, I noticed in my own self that I was more relaxed in moments where I felt pressure to deliver a product or to solve a problem. My problem-solving holiday led me to notice how often in my personal life, I felt called to problem solve. I felt called to offer some suggestion and some solution. And even though I was a trained mediator and a collaborative lawyer who believed that my job was to help other people solve their own problems, I had a habit, as I think many of us do, of seeing my role always to be the one that helped find the solutions. And in doing that, sure, I used a lot of the skills that I'd been taught mostly through an interest-based mediation approach. I used those skills and I really thought I was getting it until I played around with curiosity and thought, I'm not that curious, actually. I'm really just trying to steer the people that I'm paid to help. Let's talk about the professional world. I'm open to their finding their own solutions, but I really want to help them. And I tended to be more directive, I think, than I really, really wanted to be. So I was also becoming a trainer. So I was beginning to teach other collaborative professionals how to do our work. And I found myself often not being able to really explain why a certain way I might do something worked. Didn't really understand why. And I would be teaching it as a skill and as something, try this, do this, right? And I always felt that it wasn't quite enough. It didn't always land. And it still felt like it was in the realm of telling. And so when I began to really get sick of the work I was doing in 2016, I met Cheryl. So Cheryl, you don't need to blush, but I'm going to talk about you for a minute. So when I met Cheryl, I was a week away from going to Pittsburgh to give a training to a group of collaborative professionals there. And they wanted me to come and teach them the way that I worked with interests, like the interest-based model was my thing. And I was, I think a fairly effective teacher in how to work with them and expand the notion of what they were. But I read Cheryl's book on the plane and I got there. I'm like, guys, I actually don't know if I should, I don't know I don't know what to do. So I stuck with my script, but built in more of the themes that I was only just starting to grasp. The themes of sort of why be curious, what to be curious about. And after that training, I committed myself to really studying insight. And I had some personal reasons for that. I really was starting to detest my job. I was really sick of fighting other people's battles when I was litigation, when I was representing a client and putting their case forward. I was sick of that. And I did find that many of the experiences I had working in family law, which was my thing, working with couples going through separation and divorce, that it didn't always matter how curious I was. If the process didn't include other professionals who were equally curious and willing to use skills of curiosity, then I was less effective. And honestly, I didn't understand. Our clients were often very resistant and defensive. And so at the end of 2016, I got in touch with Cheryl and said, okay, what if I committed every Tuesday in 2017 to really paying attention here as a student of insight? Would you help me? And she did. And I'm grateful. So not everyone can take every Tuesday out of their work life to really devote themselves to this. And even if you are, not everyone's going to be lucky enough to have a mentor who shows up just when you need her. And so what I want to talk about today is how do we go for, I think of it as like challenges and opportunities, obstacles and pathways, threats and hopes. And how do we focus on our job? For those of us who are courageous enough to do this work where we're trying to help other people gain insight, right? It's one thing and it's so valuable to do the work to develop insight within yourself and so that you can be present and truly able to be and work with whatever's going on interiorly. But we choose to do this with clients. I mean, I'm looking at some faces on this screen who we choose to walk into a room and work with people who promised they would be together for life. They promised that they would raise children together, and something happened that ended that. And so they've got very, very strong defenses. Their threats are so visceral, they're so real. And we, as the professionals who want to help, we're never taught how to work with that. We were never taught how to work with that. And so if we want to think about insight as a way to transform conflict or help people change patterns of behavior so that they can more effectively hear and understand one another, so that they can make decisions about what's their future going to be, we have got to pay attention within the, I will say, family conflict profession of how we manage our clients' threats, how we help them transform their conflict into a pattern of interacting where they can effectively make decisions when they have to together, and how much can that approach launch them into a better future as individuals, as parents, as people who are going to probably remain in community with one another on some level because they have a relationship. And so what I want to do first is tell you a little bit what I did. So 2017, Tuesdays was insight, and then Fridays. So like, I have a really great husband. So I'm like, I don't think I'm going to make any money in 2017. I'm going to keep the law practice going, but basically working only 3 days a week is just going to cover the expenses. And he said, yay, go for it. And I was lucky enough to have both the flexibility and the support from my partner who has an income. But what I did was as I was studying so hard and rather earnestly to, in some ways, unlearn what I'd been taught, right? I really struggled. Cheryl and I talked about this last night when we had a chance to have a beer together. I struggled. Am I unlearning? Am I learning? What's going on for me? And the experience of that year coincided with, remember I said, with extreme frustration with some of the cases I was working on that were supposed to be collaborative, which meant there was supposed to be this commitment to helping the clients hear and understand one another so that they could make good decisions and reach an agreement. So I had this thing going on. I'm like, I hate my job. Oh, I love this learning. I hate my job. I love this learning. And then my daughter said, I'm going to go to law school, Mom. I'm like, oh God, I can't hate my job anymore. So I decided to ask my favorite clients, some of whom were in collaborative cases, some were mediation clients, and because I was still litigating then, were like in the sort of in the fight phase of court. I asked them for their feedback. What's it like to work with me? Forget the process, forget whatever was going on. What was it like for you to engage with me? How could I have helped you in different ways that would have met your needs better? Just sort of open-ended, what might have been better for you? And the consistent response was they appreciated the human relationship we developed. So it goes beyond just being advisor and recipient of this blessed advice because I'm the know-it-all. They appreciated our human connection. They appreciated my questions. And I had, even though I was good at questions, I was getting better at it because I was studying insight. They thought there were some ways that they could have been better prepared to answer them, right? So I took that to heart. I'm like, oh, because I was remembering as a mediator that there was so much work that I would do to help. Remember, I'm dealing with separating couples, to help each spouse get ready to come into the room for a mediation session. And I was reflecting on how much more rewarding for me and satisfying, I think, for the clients it was when we had the chance for them to reflect on who they are, what they need, what they're hoping for, and what are the obstacles in the way of getting to where they want to be. But they didn't want to always pay for that. So some clients said, I really appreciated that, but sometimes I was watching the clock and thinking, how much is this costing me to have a great conversation with you? I thought, okay. So I did this. I'm going to show you a video that will explain what I did. Some of you know this, and I'm hoping it will help in the next phase of our conversation. So let me just get this going. Whoops. Can everybody see it? I guess couples going through a separation are facing emotional, practical, financial, and legal challenges. And as a divorce lawyer, I wanted to help them be more prepared for their meetings with me. Clients often resist us when we want to get into the conversation about what's underneath the fear or the demand or the worry.
Our Family in Two Homes is a tool that grounds both clients and professionals in the process so they have a common language in their work together.
As a collaborative divorce lawyer, I was highly motivated to be happier at work. And so when I created these resources, I was firstly only ever using them with my clients. And I noticed that they were happier too. They were more prepared for their meetings with me. They valued the deeper dialogue that we were able to get into because they'd been prepared. Our colleagues around the world who are now using the resources, they report the same thing.
I've had clients tell me that the workbooks have made their fights less personal. It's not you're wrong or I'm right, but we're different. And once they understand their differences, they're able to work to come up with a plan for their future that's going to work for both of them and for their family. When you work with the workbooks, you join a network of like-minded professionals all around the world who are constantly sharing their experiences and bouncing ideas off one another. And it's really nice to have that connection with people who are like you and who want to help families.
I think the reason the workbook has such an impact on the client is that they can do it on their own time, and it engages their sense of self-discovery, which is actually, it's often lost when people are stressed and anxious and worried. And so it invites clients to consider who they are so that the professionals who are helping them can identify those challenges, those obstacles in the way, and help the couple then in their pattern make decisions together and reach agreement. Our Family in 2 Homes is for parents who are raising children still. Our Family in a Few Homes helps couples who are separating when their children are now adults. Over time, we saw the success of the workbooks that were helping clients prepare for dialogue and not debate. And then we thought, wouldn't it be cool if we had a workbook for people who want to stay together?
Designing Our Future Together is our newest workbook that focuses on families coming together, whether that involves people getting married, moving in together, or people who've been together for a long time and need a relationship refresh. I became a lawyer because I wanted to help people. And now, as a lawyer, I want my clients to feel better leaving my office than they did coming in.
It's time to innovate. It's time for a refresh. And the colleagues who are joining the 2 Homes professional community are all innovators in their communities. Let us help you stand out as an innovative professional in your community. So I didn't know at the time that I was deciding to do this, because it was the same year I was studying so intensely with Cheryl that it was going to have such a profound impact on the clients, right? I thought, oh, this will be a good tool. Yay, great. Now I can say to clients, you're responsible for doing some of this work, all of that stuff. But what I discovered was that clients showed up already beginning their journey of discovery. So I was shocked it had such an impact. And yet when I think about it now, like I look at the questions, there's a question about, how I tend to behave when I need to talk about difficult things, and how my partner tends to behave, and how I interpret my partner's behavior and what my partner tells me about what they are interpret of my behavior. So there's verification and interpretation in here. The hope questions on page 1. The questions that are articulated in these workbooks are elicitive. They're encouraging people to learn something new about themselves. And I never knew that was going to be such a powerful drug. So what I eventually ended up doing was formulating a way to interact with all of my clients, I guess, at that engagement where they've done I call it the first 13 pages of the workbook, which are the reflection pages. And it includes things that conflict professionals know about conflict style. Do you think out loud like me? Are you an introvert who tends to process internally? How do you tend to show up when the rubber hits the road? It incorporates values, which is really fundamental, because in so many ways, our negotiating model, those of us who were trained in that negotiating model, were taught, well, you can't negotiate values anyway, so whatever. And of course, everything I was learning about insight was that, of course, the values are when threatened, are the core, the source of the conflict behavior, which is the obstacle in the way of us doing our damn jobs. And so it was it was just quite a beautiful pairing, but it's no coincidence. It's no coincidence that these workbooks, when they're in the hands of a client who's going through a hard time, hey, check, and they're going through a hard time, so they're motivated, right? They're motivated they want something to make the pain go away, so they'll actually feel respected and supported with a resource that helps them prepare for whatever work we're going to do. So now that I call myself proudly an insight mediator, and after, I don't know how many years, Cheryl, you and I discussed the word negotiation, because I'm like, we got to use the word negotiation because that's the way lawyers see it. So my whole frame for the work that I'm doing has shifted to, it's my job to help you make good decisions about your future. And that kind of language is embedded in the resource that I created thanks to Insight. And so as an insight mediator, I'm a practitioner. I'm working with other people's conflicts, right? And so the extent to which everything I've learned about insight has improved me and my understanding of myself, my ability to be really present, like to really just be present, that has truly, truly transformed me and how I am in the world. But taking that knowledge into the room to help other people with their conflicts, that's an entirely different thing. And I'm excited that we can, as a community, begin to see how practitioners, that is, those of us who are going to courageously wade into the room and work with other people's conflict, help with other people's threats, help them to realize what they hope for. That I would never have articulated it that way 5 years ago. And I certainly wasn't delivering an insightful process, though I was getting results. And so what I can say is that by bringing insight into my day job, it's made me more relaxed in every way, way less invested in the outcome, and way more comfortable in moments of conflict, whether it's resistance that I'm getting, because those of us who work with people in divorce and separation, we often get our clients resisting us. I mean, there's lots of conflict between me as the lawyer or the mediator and the person. Nonetheless, insights help me to just really, really get good at noticing and wondering, and therefore responding without some prescriptive model that is so focused on problem solving that we see understandable and reasonable reactions to threat. So we see our clients' behaviors as the obstacle to our doing the job of problem solving if we use that negotiating model. And I like to say resistance is fertile, because if we can learn to work with it, we can learn more, and then we can help our clients understand both themselves individually and improve, transform, change, right, their pattern of interaction so that they can have better lives too. And that hopefully goes down to their children and goes up to building stronger foundations for our communities. And so I feel like the work that we do in separation and divorce is truly has the ability to transform communities. And I feel like studying insight and learning it and really working hard to get it in my bones so that I'm living it has been a beautiful thing. So that's my story. I mean, there's lots more to it, but I could bore you with the details. I would love to just open it up to questions or examples from your own work about where you've experienced the challenge or the opportunity, you know, the obstacle or the pathway, the threat or the hope in your own work. And we'll just leave a moment for people to just digest and see if you want to share something. Kim?
Oh, you can see me reacting, looking down below. Good eye contact. You're reading the body language of everybody in the room. You got that one down. I was just thinking that I actually got trained first to do mediation in 1986. And in those days, there really wasn't a skill set that we were learning. I mean, there was, but it was more, I don't know, very basic. But what I found was I was absolutely terrible mediator. And because all I saw was their defend behaviors that I now can label defend behaviors, and which basically just made me have judgment about them. You know, they were stupid, they were resistant, they were, you know, interfering, you know, didn't care about their spouse. They had so many judgments. And eventually I stop mediating. I just thought that I was just terrible at it and recognized that I was terrible at it. And it wasn't until the collaborative movement started, and I started working with mental health practitioners. And when I first started, there wasn't mental health practitioners, but eventually they became, came onto the scene, and I started realizing that there was a whole other set of skills that we could learn. And then, kind of coming forward to insight of really, there's so many things that we were taught, so many skill sets, whether interest-based or whether it was narrative mediation or whether it was whatever, trainings that I went to. I mean, I literally went to 8 40-hour trainings over all the years to try to get better. But it wasn't until Insight where we really started looking at the theory behind how clients learn, that the light bulbs started going on, and it made so much more of an intuitive practice with the clients possible, of, like you say, really being present and reacting in the moment to where they are, and understanding that the question you ask makes a difference. And so what is it that we are truly trying to elicit to help them reach the decisions that they need to make? Okay, that's my spiel.
Thanks, Kim. Yeah, we need to talk about this as mediators and as collaborative professionals. For those of you who don't know, we would consider mediators to be collaborative professionals who are working to try and do consensual conflict resolution, but also just helping people transition from one form of relationship to another. Others, challenges, opportunities, or just a story. Laura.
So it was interesting listening to Kim, because that resembles my journey from the mediation training that I took, which I thought was the solution to a better way after litigating in family law for a number of years. And I didn't know what I didn't know back then, and embrace the model that we were trained in, the problem-solving negotiation model, but wasn't satisfied with it. So I kind of put mediation on the shelf because I fell out of love with it because I thought, oh, well, when collaborative came along, the idea of there being a team and the divorce coaches to deal with the pieces that we lawyers weren't trained in to deal with, that were the challenging parts to mediation. So fast forward, now that, well, when a number of years ago, it's like 15 now, I did my master's at York University in the Osgoode Hall Law Program. And I stumbled over Insight Mediation. And I thought I had read Cheryl's book back then, but when I went back to, because I've got my tub full of paper still and articles that I photocopied for that program, and I went back, and it was actually a chapter in a book called The Art and Science of Mediation. And it always stuck with me, the theory behind it and the basis for it. And fast forward to recently, within the last year, it always tugged at me that there's something there for family law. There's something there. And as I was rekindling my commitment and desire to explore that, that's when I saw the email about Jacinta's training in the collaborative through IACP. And I just jumped on board. And so that's my journey, which is similar to Kim's in the sense that now I feel that I can be equipped with the right questions, the right approach. Just the lights have gone off, and it just makes so much sense. And it's the answer to what I've been searching for. And I was searching for it back when I was doing my Master's of Law. The very first paper I did was exploring, what do you do in mediation? What do you solve? So I studied the transformative approaches, and I stumbled across insight, and now I want to go back and rewrite that paper because I found the answer finally, and it was in insight mediation, which is transformative. And I love how it combines the transformative approach to mediation plus the learning theory. And it's just brilliant. Thank you, Cheryl. So one of my experiences that recently that drove me to think about insight mediation again after all these years was experiences as a lawyer attending mediation and being so disappointed in the lost opportunities for growth, and to actually help couples communicate better and resolve their conflicts and misunderstandings. And I was pulling out my hair because I went into one mediation, and there were parents, they really needed the dialogue, and I thought they were going to get it. They weren't even in the room. We were there the whole day. They were never in the same room for 1 minute.
Yeah.
There was no conversation, no dialogue. And that's where I was like, I'm going to look at this insight mediation again. I was just so disappointed, and it happened a few times. And it's just unfortunate because sure, you can reach agreement, you can help the couple reach agreements, but there's just this lost opportunity to transform the dynamics and the communication. And so that's what's inspired me to participate and learn as much as I can, like Jacinta talks about. So thank you for letting me share my story.
Thanks, Laura. What's going on in your day jobs? If this is something that you want to embody, right? What are the challenges of making this just the way you do it? And even if you just want to share what it is that you do, like what is your job? And in this small group, just throw out like, what are your hopes with respect to even bringing insight to your work? Because we have to support one another. It's a tough job. Yeah, Upasana?
Hi, thank you, Jacinta, and thank you, Laura, Kim, and everybody else who shared their history and experiences with insights with us. So I'm from Delhi, India, as I've already told you, and I'm a mediator based in India. I think I don't have that much experience as all of you here have. So I have been part of mediations as lawyer and as an observer and as a mediator. So let me just give you a brief about my intentions with what intentions I'm coming here. I'm meeting all of you. I approach Cheryl and everything. So I am a mix of three professions, and I practice as a lawyer, I am a mediator, and I am assistant professor with a state university in India. So I realized that alternative dispute resolution in India is starting to gain pace, and particularly arbitration has been in the industry present here in India since the past 15 years. However, mediation is something which is introduced 10 years back. However, it has not been accepted quite a lot by lawyers, by academicians, judges, people in general. And leave alone if you talk about metropolitans, as in the industrial and commercial hubs, then still where education sectors, education institutes are there, then still people know about it. However, if we go to the interiors of India, then mediation is still confused with meditation, if I
Oh,
am
yeah.
being very honest. Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So, and I am saying this because I have experienced it myself, that students, the first question that they ask from me is it not similar to arbitration? What is the difference?
Mhm.
There is a third party there.
Yeah.
So then the concept of mediation is at a very nascent stage. It is developed. There are trainings in India. There are mediation centers in India. There are Supreme Court mediation centers, district centers, and mediation is taking place primarily in family and matrimonial matters.
Mhm.
However, it is entirely interest-based. Insight mediation is, as far as my understanding goes, it is not introduced in India. Maybe somebody is working on it uh, at an individual capacity. However, in terms of curriculum and teaching module, it is not introduced. I am also new to the idea. However, I find it very interesting that in mediation, it is always, as a part of active listening, it is always taught to the mediator and the person who is getting trained to listen to the speaker. Here you are listening to the listener. So your target is, just like Kim said, that it is the defend behavior that we are looking at. So, and I'm reading about it, I'm learning about it inside mediation. So now what I'm doing, since you talk about the day job, I have my own organization with the name Accords International. And I am in a process of launching foundation learning program in mediation for law students and young professionals, and even school students, because it is not only a professional skill, it is also a life skill that you should that is why we are dealing with conflict resolution, that is mediation and restorative justice, not only mediation. So we have both the concepts and both the mechanisms going. So I'm just finishing up, I'm not taking a lot of your time. So my idea is that I'm in conversation with Cheryl that how can we introduce insight? First, how can I learn about it? And second, how can we briefly introduce a different model to the young minds, the young professional students who will be enrolling in the training, which I will launch in August or September. So that's how I thank you. So my target is to not only, as in India, the unfortunate bit is that the mediation trainings are kept at a very high price, just like internationally. So students, they don't dream about taking that. And when students don't learn about mediation at a very young age, then as lawyers and judges, it is always alternative dispute resolution for them. It is never mainstream. It is always alternate. So I want to change the alternate.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Thanks so much, Upasana, for sharing that and for being motivated and courageous enough to say, you know what, not only do I want to make mediation happen in India, I want us to do it right. And so you will find that there's a receptivity, particularly among people who haven't already gotten into the patterns. I mean, if you want to talk about defending behaviors, just watch lawyers. I mean, it's basically our day is spent with our shields up. And so yay. And know that you're not alone. In North America, where we should know way better, many of the law schools only offer maybe a course, and they still call it alternate dispute resolution. And you might get another course in collaborative approaches. But my daughter graduated from law school 3 years ago, and she was taught all the same old crap I was. So let's help each other. I'm glad you found us, because this is how we'll support one another.
I'm glad to. Thank you.
Yeah.
So isn't like Australia and in those countries about the only place that alternative mediation, that litigation is the alternative? I mean, I think that
Oh, yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, the word alternative is ridiculous because yeah, I gave a workshop last year called The Lawyer's Day Job. You know, working with conflict when relationships matter. I mean, this is your day job. 2% of cases go to trial, and yet we set up our whole way of being as if everyone's going to trial.
It's so
So
true.
yes, yeah, yeah.
I love what you're doing, by the way. That is courageous and really, I mean, so cutting edge, and it's got to be so much work, and you can tell that your heart is super in it. And so I wish you the, you know, most success. That's wonderful.
And I can offer you some encouragement as far as time zones go. We two of our Malaysian lawyers, just one Malaysian from Indian descent and one Chinese descent, they took some insight training with me, and they're excited to do more. And we had 5 from Hong Kong and some Australians and some New Zealand people. So know that in your part of the world, in that time zone piece, that there are others. Cheryl, I'd love for you to say something.
Yeah, well, I wanted to make a connection for you, Oksana and Allison, whether she's going to tell you this, but she actually has a lot of experience in some of the areas that you're interested in developing, Allison, as part of a group that does community, we call it community mediation. In many ways, it's restorative in some capacities that you're looking at as well. But she has a lot of, she's been trained in insight. She's a good insight person, and she's working in some of the contexts, I think, that you're interested. So I wanted to speak for you, Allison, if I could, and just make one point. I think it was Kim, you were saying earlier that, you know, about, anyway, about the, I wrote, what is so powerful about insight, you know, and Laura, you were talking about that as well. And I think one of the things that makes insight so powerful is that all of the skills that we teach and use in insight are embedded theoretically. They're not sort of, well, let's just do it this way because we think it might work. And so I reiterate that it's not something that you wouldn't already know, but the fact that they're theoretically supported and enhanced as we learn more about the theory, we learn more about the skill. You know, that's where the power lies. That you can always figure out what's going on because you can, your theory teaches you about human behavior and human interaction, and the skills are embedded to, are taught to you. So when they're behaving in this way, you know, this is the kinds of things that would make sense and be helpful to them. That's why we ask about threats. That's why we deepen rather than broaden, and, you know, all the kinds of things. But, and that was just a thought that, that it really is, as was mentioned, and Laura, I think you mentioned that as well, the theory behind what we do is very, very strong and cannot be, I mean, it can be advanced, but it cannot be, you know, criticized to the extent that it doesn't make sense. So,
Yeah. Anybody else want to share a? Oh, Jennifer, so good. How come your hand didn't go look raised? There it is.
I only just raised it.
You moved. I hate that. You're down here and now you're up here.
That's strange. I don't know why I moved, but
All right.
no, I find these conversations so beneficial. But I just wanted to share, I'm not a mediator. I learned about insight through the master's program at Royal Roads because there's a significant focus on it. And I work in a post-secondary institution, and I work managing the student conduct process, as well as the sexual violence and misconduct process. So of course, we are dealing with conflict and conflictual behaviors. And that's why I did the master's in conflict analysis and management. And I find a strong similarity to some of the restorative justice questions. And we've infused those questions into our interviews and have that approach in trying to work with our students. But for me, the insight approach, the difference and the additional learning for me was this idea of threats, the threats really driving this behavior and trying to get to that. And so I'm really continuing to try to infuse that work. And so I'm really interested in your workbooks. So I went quickly on the website, and I did put in a submission. So when you see my name and it says mental health practitioner, it's because that was the closest option I could think to pick. So I did want to share, I do think there's so much that's transferable, and there may be other professions to involve in this work. And I'm just curious if because I don't necessarily want to license, get a license in order to practice, but I'm really interested in the workbooks. And so I'm just wondering if that's an option. Is there an option to be able to purchase the workbooks?
In fact, our new website's going to be launched in 2 weeks. But thank you for noticing that. So let me give you some examples. I have a family business succession mediation right now, right? And it's a family passing wealth to the next generation. There's a lot of conflict. There's some stories that were never resolved. There's some misunderstandings and all that. So I'm like, how'd you find me? And they're like, people just said if we've got our own conflict, we should use you. So all the experts are sitting on the side. But you know what I did? I basically took the workbook and tore out all the pages that have to do with family law and said, here, do this before I meet you. And I had the same experience. And so I want you to know that part of what I see, building on the themes of what we've talked about within the legal profession, is to figure out ways to help all of us do better work in conflict. Like now I've been asked to do physician-patient mediation, so I'm like, okay, it's like when you talk about challenges and opportunities, it feels like we lost Cheryl. It feels like the universe is finally going, oh, you've struggled enough to make this really be. We're going to throw you a bone. And so I do see that. And I see lots of talk about threats, dealing with people who've been harassed and injured. So please know that it may be one of the most powerful ways that those of us who are lawyers and insight practitioners can help, is that we need to find a way to get people out of their lawyer's office when their conflict is not about the law. Right? What family lawyers will say, and Upasana, I don't know whether this would be the same in India, but wouldn't you say, Kim and Laura, I'm not sure, Shannon, what your work is, but what percentage of our cases, let's call them cases, is there really a legal issue? Like 15%? Like maybe, where it's actually a question of law? What would you say? I mean, I don't do legal research anymore. I can't stand it. I don't care. But at the same time, when people are when people have been injured, they might go to a lawyer before they go to a resource that can help them resolve. When they get a divorce, they're still going to lawyers' offices first. They probably don't need to. We're trying to change that culture. And yet there's so many ways that we have to help each other, because as long as the lawyers are going to dominate the conflict arena, so Laura, you're still doing mediations in Nanaimo where the lawyers are dominating, and Kim, I hear from so many of our colleagues in the States, if they happen to be in a state where it's a lawyer-dominated process, it is not even recognizable to to even a good problem solving process. Like, so I think that as long as we have people believing or being sold the idea that if they've got a problem, they need a lawyer. Upasana and Kim and Laura and I and other lawyers will keep trying to say, choose carefully, right? Like we have to, like even I have worked really hard to make the marketing of our resources, our family in two homes, speak to the client so that the client will make the choice. None of our stuff talks about the expertise of the lawyer. It's all about, you want some help working out something? Over here, we can help. We want to work with you, not for you. And the other part is that prep piece, which Jennifer, I think it's frightening to think of what people are asked to participate in when they're not ready. So I'm curious, I'm going to be meeting with another mediator that cares and works the way I do for the most part, and someone from the College of Physicians and Surgeons to talk about, well, what would that look like? And I'm only willing to do it if there's a commitment to preparation, solid foundation building and insight. So, you know, I'm lucky. By the way, for those of you who don't know Canada very well, I'm in a small province. Cheryl lives 25 minutes away, right? Like Prince Edward Island. It's in some ways an easy place to make a change if you can ignite people's commitment to it, because there's only 165,000 of us, right? But it's also a great incubator because we can try things out without risks that sometimes show up in other bigger places. So.
Yeah, thank you. That's very helpful. And I agree with you about the pre-work. The only thing we really do, because we're responding to incidents. And so of course there's time constraints and things like that. So we give them guidelines to prepare them for what the interview is going to look like and what they can expect. But it's in the interview where we ask those questions. And so I am really intrigued about this idea of, are there some questions that we can front load and just say, think about this before you come to the interview, just so, pardon me, they're not totally taken by surprise by some of the types of questions we're asking, because we are asking questions that are trying to get down to their values and their motivations and what was causing the behavior. You know, recognizing the behavior is just an expression of something else. So that's really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting to see such a transition from, you know, the way I work now. I really don't see a client until they've had the workbook in their hands and they've done those reflection pages, which they do not resist doing. Like I'll often be asked, how do you get them to do it? I'm like, it's because it somehow engages their desire for self-discovery. Like it's just, if it were a bunch of information, or if it was like so many people give client handouts and it's filling in forms and it's information, it's all this stuff. And I'm like, I don't even want to meet you till you've explored a little bit about who you are. And then when I meet with the client in the normal thing, I somehow settled on 4 questions. Blah, 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 hello, 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 all the piece, you know, attending to the person who arrives, and some need more upfront rapport building than others. And then it's like, what did you learn about yourself? Doing the first 13 pages, right? The reflection pages. And they always have an answer. They go to what resonated. They always have an answer. And I'm like, oh, what did you learn about your pattern that you get into with your partner when things are not easy or when you disagree? And they have an answer. And then I say, what are you worried about as we approach? So whatever's coming up, the joint session, a mediation session, whatever it's going to be, where they're going to be in the room with the other person. So, and the 4th question, which I used to ask, but I figured I had the answers, was how can I help? So it's really fits the role of really like, who are you? What are you discovering about yourself through this? If I asked a client who had not been prepared, so what are you learning about yourself in all of this? They were like, that life sucks and my world is over and you can't trust anyone and you should never, right? Well, now I get, well, that was a breath of fresh air. I'm like, you're kidding me. Or a client saying, I'm excited to get started. I'm like, what? Is there? So I don't know how to explain it, except the only thing that changed for me was I learned insight. And I created these things. I did it. I'm proud of myself. I did it. And so now we're working with couples who want to stay together. And it's a different way because they're choosing to be together. Their relationship isn't over or transitioning. They're building. And so it's the same elicitive insight questions shifted to you're together. So it's quite a lovely way. We have clients that are used to showing up to talk about a prenup because the other person doesn't trust them. And it's all about the lawyer protecting them and they're resisting. They don't want to see the lawyer. And now we're just like, yeah, you know what, before you even come in, just here, take the workbook and we'll see you on Thursday. And then they're like laughing, sipping wine and doing the exercises together. And so I don't know how to, it sounds like now I'm just promoting my product, but I got to tell you, it all came from learning insight. Otherwise, I would have been a teller. I would have been, and even when we were translating, we have our family in 2 homes in Spanish, German, and we're working on Portuguese because my friends, our people, have said, I'll translate it. But in the translating, we had to get really clear that stop telling. Like, oh, shouldn't we add some information about what child developmental needs in the parenting plan? I'm like, no, right? And so that's another job. That's another thing is when parents need education, we provide them with information that they might need, but it's not going to land anyway if they're resisting us. It's not going to land if they're not asking us to help. And so what I find most impactful with the preparation tools is that when I say, what did you learn about yourself? And they mention trust, right? Like that, then I have a page in the workbook that talks about trust that I know that they've seen, that they've considered and reflected on. And I'm not manipulating them into thinking, well, you know, that there's probably 7 aspects of trust to work on. So when I help by saying what parts are working and what parts do you need to work on, they're engaged because they discovered it. It's totally different from, or when I used to educate clients about communication patterns. Oh, did you know there's this thing as basic as extrovert, introvert? Well, you know, sometimes it would land, sometimes it, like, here I am just educating someone who may know it already, or who may not care, or who may be so preoccupied with their dread about the friggin' mortgage payment that has to be made on Friday, and they don't know how they're also going to pay their lawyer, right? They're not receptive. So it's like we're wasting our time. And so I want you to know that my experience of working with the clients now is that they're like, or if they need homework, because there's work to do in a complex family law beginning to end, there's lots of things to do. They have the same framework. They have the same place to go back to. So when they need information, I can say it's on page 34 to 37. Have a look at it tonight and I'll talk to you tomorrow. And they're receptive and ready rather than Kim and Laura. I mean, when you're explaining the law and they're like, whatever, it's going over, but we persist. It's like, it's our job to give you information. So it's a struggle. Anyway, that's our hour. Anybody want to? So there's been some emails posted in the chat. I've grabbed some of them. Know that if you're joining EC, Insight Collaborations International, you know, we're really gathering. And if you're looking to train as an insight mediator more, get in touch right now with me or Cheryl, and we can help you find the places. There aren't that many of us delivering the actual training yet, but we're working on building that capacity. So Jennifer, I saw your email thing and I've got Allison's already. And I think, I don't know how we do this.
Thank you.
All right. So thanks everybody. Oh, okay. I got Jennifer's. All right. So have a great rest of the day. And And Upasana, I'm going to email you about the gang that are in your time zone. Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank
All
you very
right.
much.
Take care, everybody.
Thank
And
you.
we're meeting tomorrow, Cheryl.
Yes, yes.
Excellent.
Bye. Nice
Okay.
meeting you, all of you. Bye.
Take care.
Right.
Bye.
Well.